to think I've jilted him at the altar. She paused in the doorway to look back at her bedroom one last time, and she had to swallow hard to stop the lump in her throat and blink back tears. All her clothes had been transferred to Jacob's home the day before, and this was the last time she would ever see this small room where she had known such contentment. With a little sigh, she followed her aunt down the stairs and went out to the carriage that Jacob had sent for her. It looked very grand, although Aunt Gertie was clearly unimpressed. "I still can't believe you're not even going to have a proper wedding breakfast," she remarked as she clambered in behind her and settled against the leather swabs. Madeline squeezed her hand. "I've explained that Jacob and I didn't think it would be fitting so soon after Father." Her voice faltered, but then pulling herself together with a great effort, she went on. "At least I shall have you there to give me away, and that's all I want. And I'm sure the meal we shall have back at Jacob's will be splendid. He tells me his cook is very good." "Well, I just hope it's something hot," Gertie grumbled, wrapping her arms about her waist. "The wind's enough to cut you in two today. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't snow. It's certainly cold enough. I just hope it holds off till I get back to Wales on the train." They lapsed into silence until soon after the carriage pulled up outside St. Peter's Church, where the vicar who would be taking over her father's parish was waiting for them. It felt strange to think that later that day he would also be moving into the vicarage that had always been her home. But she tried as best she could to push the gloomy thoughts away for now. At the door, she took her aunt's arm, and they glided down the aisle towards Jacob. He had a broad smile on his face and looked so handsome that her concerns momentarily faded away. "I'll be a good wife to him," she promised herself. The service was over in the blink of an eye, and before she knew it, they were back outside. It was not the wedding that Madeline had dreamed of as a little girl. There was no one waiting to shower them with rose petals and rice, but she was trembling with a mixture of nervousness and excitement all the same. She was now Mrs. Kettle, the wife of a well-respected judge. "I trust you will have time to return to my home for a meal before you have to catch your train." Jacob addressed Gertie, but there was no warmth in his voice. She was equally as icily polite as he when she answered, "That would be very pleasant. Thank you." And so the newlyweds climbed into the carriage, while Gertie followed in a second one with Frederick Marshall, one of the judge's colleagues who had stood as best man for him. When they arrived at the judge's home, Gertie was forced to admit it was very impressive. 3 stories high and surrounded by low iron railings. She judged that the downstairs alone must be as big as the whole of her cottage put together. Not that she would have swapped it. Gertie had never set much store by material possessions. The judge ushered them all through a thick oak door into a long hallway, and then into a dining room, where a large table was set with fine china and crystal glasses for a meal. There was a large fire burning in the grate, and Gertie headed for it instantly to warm her cold hands as the judge sent a maid away to fetch them all a tray of tea. The meal followed shortly after, and although it was plain, Gertie was forced to admit that it was wholesome and filling. They were served with leek and potato soup, followed by roast beef with all the trimmings, and finally a jam roly-poly pudding and custard. At the end of the meal, Jacob stood and, after the maid had filled their glasses with wine, he proposed a toast. "To my lovely new wife." It was short and sweet, but Madeline was touched nonetheless. Soon after, Gertie glanced at the clock and said reluctantly, "I'm afraid I should be heading for the station now, if I'm to catch my train." "I shall have the carriage sent round for you immediately," Jacob responded. And when he bustled away, Gertie took Madeline's hands in her own. She still couldn't take to her niece's new husband. There was just something about him that she didn't like. Perhaps it was the way his smile never seemed to quite reach his eyes. "Now, you know where I am if you need me." Gertie, never one to show much affection, found that she was choked, especially when Madeline's eyes filled with tears. "I know, but I shall be fine, really." They exchanged a brief hug, and shortly after Gertie took her leave along with Fred.